In Chapter 6, we're going to talk about making decisions and doing some problem solving, which every day we do that, whether we're in school or at home or in our workplace. So no matter what role you are in nursing, you're constantly going to be involved in making decisions and helping to solve problems. Not all decisions are going to begin with problems. So before a problem is presented, we usually have multiple choices, different actions that we can take that's available to us. An example would be a nurse leader might become engage a group of nurses in making decisions about how future nursing care should be delivered for a certain type of patients that they have on their units. So no problem really was there that needed to be solved, but this was just merely a opportunity for them to be able to start thinking creatively and using some critical thinking and involving some of their personal judgments as well. When we think about problem solving, this is basically nouns or names. Problems usually include staffing shortages, insufficient supplies. Maybe you have too many assistive personnel and so maybe with the budget you're paying too many people to do the same thing, where you might need less assistive personnel and more direct care individuals. And with problems, some problems, there are immediate choices that have to be made, and this is usually based on maybe closing a gap about what's going on and what is to be desired, because it really needs to be fixed fast. Although one way to solve a problem is to refrain from the desired, which means usually the real choice is to alter maybe a current reality to better address the desired state that should be done. In other words, you can't just go, okay, let's fix this and this will solve all of our problems. You have to see what else is also involved and who it involves before you can actually jump into making a real choice fast and quick to fix a problem. So let's say you have an issue that comes up and you're trying to decide, is this really a problem and what am I going to do to fix it? Or maybe it's not really a problem and we just thought it was, but it's actually not. So these are a list of questions that they say to ask yourself. And by answering these questions, this can help simplify that decision. For an example would be, if the answer to the first 5 questions is no, then you have to decide what to do next. Is it important? No. Is it mine? Does it affect me? No. Am I qualified for it? No. Do I have the authority to change it or start creating a change? If it's no. Or do I have the resources? No. Well, that's probably not something I can take care of at this point in time. So then I have to decide what to do next. So do I tell someone? Do I turn it over? Or if it's really not a problem, maybe I just thought it was my problem. So if sometimes we just don't really have a problem. We think there's a problem, but there's not a problem. And if you go into trying to change something and solve something where there really wasn't an issue, you're going to be wasting a lot of time, resources, and effort and money. So when we look at the problem-solving process, again, we need to go back and make sure that a decision needs to be made and realize that, again, that not all decisions begin with a problem. If you remember on a couple of slides before, I think I said something about before you are presenting something as a problem, sometimes we have choices, multiple choices that are available to us that we can use. And so sometimes it's not really a problem, and maybe we can just make another choice. A, B, C, or D was available. However, for example, if a nurse leader member, I said something about engaging a group and making a decision about how future nursing should be delivered, there really wasn't a problem. They're just wanting to see what improvements we can make, and build off that. So there was no problem to solve, but it was really opportunity for those nurses to start thinking creatively and pulling things out of the hat that they'd like to try. So when you're looking at the problem-solving process, there's a few things that we need to think about. Is establish the need for a solution. Is it really, is there really a need for a solution, or is this just something I just don't like doing, but it works, but it's just a pain? And however, if you think there is a problem, make sure you go back through those questions on the previous slide. Then you need to justify the need. Does this really need to happen now? Do I have the means? Do I have the resources? Do I have input? Do I have the authority, and so forth? Then you want to contextualize the problem and then write your problem statement. That way you narrow everything down. Sometimes we try to solve a problem, but we're actually trying to solve several problems at one time. So you need to really focus in, and that's where your problem statement comes from. Now this is really good too, and something that you want to pay attention to when you're thinking about problems too, is thinking, what is my basic need? What outcome do I want to reach? It's like using the nursing process, really. And then who stands to benefit and why? So if you can answer these questions, this will help you along the way. Is the effort aligned with our strategy? Are we doing the same thing? Is everybody in? Has everyone bought in that's going to help me to get this across? What is the desired benefits for the company, and how will we measure them? So again, just like we do in the nursing process when we talk about our goals. And so how can we make it measurable so we know? And then again, what are the benefits of this? Because if you want people to buy into something and you're coming up with a solution to a problem, you want to see what are the benefits to the company. Somebody else may come in with something that's even better because maybe yours doesn't really show a lot of benefits. And then how will we ensure that a solution is implemented? How are we going to put it into action? Who's going to be in charge of what? How are we going to do the training? How are we going to gather our resources? How are we going to get the expertise and get everyone involved that needs to be involved? Here are a couple others along with the problem-solving processes. And again, many times you're using schematics, you're using tables, charts to help your team come up with a solution to a problem. But looking at whatever approaches we've tried before, and you definitely don't want to be doing something that someone else has already done and it didn't work. You're wasting a lot of time and effort there. So what have others tried? Maybe you can build on something somebody else has tried and maybe improve it. Your internal and external constraints on implementing. Know what your barriers are. What requirements must be used to meet the goals. Which problem solvers should we be using to engage in? Look at those individuals who can benefit you when you're coming up with this problem solving issue. Who are the expertise? Who can you pull from? And then what do you want them to submit? And when? Make sure there's a timeline. And then how will solutions be evaluated and measure your success? And again, that comes way back when you want to set up your goals. A lot of this right here is pretty common sense, but when you want to make a good sound decision, make sure your information that you gathered is accurate, relevant, valid, and you've gotten it in a timely manner and it's not outdated. So those are 4 key things that you want to think about. Just as if you were writing a paper and we tell you to pull in your resources and list those, you want to make sure it's accurate, relevant, valid, and of course timely. You just want to make sure in my opinion, is that it's less than 5 years. So it's the most recent information. Last but not least is just tips for decision making and problem solving. And so these are all listed here. And I think they're pretty self-explanatory. So what we'll do in class is I have an assignment that we'll do, and you'll go through some steps on how to go through the decision problem process. And so we'll come up with a definition, and then we'll go through the problem solving methods, and we'll cover that in class.